In this video, we'll be understanding or we'll be looking at the classes in TypeScript, right? So TypeScript kind of brings the object-oriented programming structure to our JavaScript, or you can say it objectifies or it converts the functional-oriented program to a more suitable or more structured class-oriented programming. But still, you always remember that TypeScript converts the TypeScript is being converted to JavaScript. It is JavaScript is functional oriented programming only, but for a well structured code or well readable code, classes are very good. So we'll be looking at different things in classes today in TypeScript. How is it different? What are the different concepts you need to understand in the classes, right? So first we'll see what are classes and how you can initialize them, how you can define them, right? Then we'll look at different access modifiers for the class, like what are the different access modifiers. Then we'll look at the read-only modifier and we'll understand the inheritance, what is the concept of inheritance, how can you use it, and static methods and properties, and many more, right? Like abstract classes and everything. So let me list down all of the things which we'll be looking at today in the concept of classes, right? So let me create another file, classes.ts, right? So first let me list down, we'll see what are classes and how to define them, right? Second, we will look at the parameters of classes, right, or variables or data elements in the classes, right? Then we look at constructor, what is called as constructor and how you can use it and what is the purpose of it, right? Then we will look at methods inside the constructor, methods inside the class, right? So what are the methods and how you can deal with them, right? Then we'll look at access modifiers. What are the different access modifiers you have in your TypeScript, like private, protected, public, all of these stuff, right? Then we'll see getters and setters. Are these really essential for TypeScript, or if you want, how can you define them, and what are getters and setters, right? Then we will be discussing about extents, or I would say inheritance. What is inheritance and how you can use them, and in that we'll be understanding super, what is super, and we'll understand derived class methods or overriding, the parent class methods, parent class properties, right? So here parameters of classes or properties of classes, this is 9. And then we'll be discussing about what else, this keyword and its importance, right? This keyword and its importance, it is very important to understand that particular concept. What are arrow functions for the sake, right? What are arrow functions for the sake? Then we will understand abstract classes or properties. What are the use cases of it, and what is actually an abstract class, and what are the rules associated with it, right? And yeah, so we can start with this. We can add more concepts as we move on, right? First thing, we'll list down what are classes. So class is nothing but a prototype for a data structure, or a prototype for something. So you define class and you define properties inside that and functions inside that, so that you will be able to access, or you will be able to identify a particular entity. Like I can define a class of type car, of bike, or anything. So bike has two wheels, one engine. All of these will become the data associated with that particular class. So basically class is a prototype of something, right? And how do you define a class? It's simple. Class, the class name, you can say class point. Okay, what does point has? It has two values, two coordinates, string comma string. So this is how I would define the properties in a class. And currently the class has two properties, that is x and y of type string. So x and y are of type string, right? So I can directly say x is of type string with 1 and y is of type string 2, right? Here we will be discussing about, after derived class properties, we'll discuss about order of initialization. Yes. So class point has two properties, x comma y, which are been by default initialized with 1 and 2. So every class will have its objects. It means class basically defines structure. So basically when I say class bike, so I will say that bike should have this. So you can create, I have given an abstract design now. I have given a design to you of bike. Then you can create multiple bikes out of it, right? So once I create a car, I will name it as some random car, and you can create as many number of cars of that design, that engine specification, etc., right? So it is basically a structure. You just say this is what we have to follow, and out of that you can create multiple things, like we call it as object. So object is nothing but the instance of the class. Now I have created a new object of type P, right? This P is nothing but it's an instance of this particular class point. Now if I do console.log p.x comma p.y, right, p.x comma p.y, then I would say ts node classes.ts. So see 1 comma 2. So in the same fashion I can declare multiple pq. I can create multiple objects out of this class, just like bike or car. So when you define a bike class, now you have arranged some specification saying that it should have 2 wheels, it should have 1 brake, 1 engine and 1 clutch, and all of this. Out following that rules, you can create exactly any number of objects. So that is what class is, and that's what objects are. Objects are instances. Objects are instances of a class, right? Objects are instances of a class. So now if I see console.log q.x comma q.y, right? So if I run this code now, both q.x and q.y are containing the same values because the values have been by default given as 1 comma 2, right? So these are values. Now what you want, let's say every bike is created now you assign a unique number to it, right? How do you identify or how do you differentiate from one bike with another? You will have serial number, you will have any other unique identifier, like let's say laptop is one class, and you want to create multiple MacBook Air Pros or multiple MacBook Pros. Then how do you differentiate from one MacBook Pro with another? You will just say, or you will just attach its own data elements like serial number and different things to identify a particular laptop, right? So for that you will need to initialize, when you are creating that MacBook only, you will initialize it with the data needed. So constructor is a unique method inside the class which doesn't have any type specifications, first thing. you don't have to specify any types. Basically, it takes the properties which have been declared on top of it, or it means it can initialize the properties which are declared in the class. So these are the declarations. So constructor basically takes the values while you are creating the object and it initiates them. So constructor is just used for initiating the properties. So constructor, first thing, constructor doesn't have, in TypeScript, doesn't have any type specifications and also return types. Okay, so unlike other methods or anything, usually you do it like this, right? X comma y, this dot x equal to x, this dot y equal to y, right? So what happens is, now when you're already this started throwing error, see, so doesn't have any type specifications. Otherwise, you see here, you go and you generally define like this, but what TypeScript can do is automatically it goes to the previous declarations and it identifies that this dot x is a string. So when you try to send some other value over here, some other value, it throws the error, right? So point 10 comma 10, or I would say 20 comma 20, right? So when I run this code, it is saying an error, unable to compile TypeScript, X implicitly has any type. Okay, so you can specify the type here now, and if you want to specify something like this, number, then you cannot assign it to the strings, right? So string, and when you are passing string, you are expected to pass the string, right? So now when you run this code, you see that p has been initialized with 10 comma 10, and q has been initialized with 20 comma 20. That is because whatever you pass inside this parenthesis, that is going directly to the constructor. So this is a special method function inside a class which can be called, which is called directly when when the object is being created with the help of new identifier. So whenever you are calling with this new, what it means is that inside the class it directly calls the constructor method. That is one thing, right? So that is one thing which we need to keep in mind. So constructor is called when we are initializing at this point of time, right? So, and it doesn't return anything. So this is just a function which prints. If I console.log x comma y, right? So I am initializing this x is different and this x is different. This is a parameter, right? This is a parameter and this is the class variable. Hence, to access any class variable, I have to use the keyword this dot x. So this dot x means it points to this, and this x is different. I wantedly put it as x comma y so that I can explain this, right? So console.log. So see, this console.log inside constructor. So constructor is called whenever you call any class with the help of new keyword, right? So when I mentioned constructor cannot have any type specifications and also return types, it means that for a normal function, if you remember, you would have write like this, right? Type some function and it takes 2 arguments and it returns void, something of this sort. In the same manner, the constructor cannot have of this sort, constructor whatever. So however you want to access this point dot constructor and any nonsense, all of these nonsense are not allowed on the constructor. Basically it takes, so the return type of constructor is automatically binded with the class itself, and the parameters are bind with what we define. So you cannot define a typed, or you cannot assign a type specifically to it, and the return type goes with whatever the class it is, right? Next we'll look at the methods. So same as what you are defining here, like objects, you can define functions as well. Print, right? So here I will be printing this dot x comma this dot y. So these are called as methods or properties of the class which are functions. So methods are the functions of a class. So a class can have any number of functions, and basically all our business logic which is required for that particular class, it sits in the methods. So you can have any number of methods, and method is same like any JavaScript function, right? So yeah, that's what methods are. And now access modifiers. So what are access modifiers, right? Access modifiers are private, protected, public, and read only, right? So first we'll understand what are public and read only, and later on we'll slowly understand protected and private, right? But I'll explain the definitions. Private means this data is not accessible anywhere outside the class. So if you declare any variable private, this data is not accessible anywhere outside the class in this fashion. Constant p equal to new point, and here I am doing 10 comma 10, right? So I cannot do p dot x console.log p dot x. So it is throwing me an error saying property x is private and only accessible within class point. So private access modifier is that this data or this method, is not accessible anywhere outside the class. Protected, this data / method is only accessible inside the derived classes. We'll understand what is derived classes. It means somebody is extending our base class. So but protected are accessible outside the class, but only inside the derived class. We'll see what it is later. Public, as it says, this is accessible from anywhere, right? And read only, this data is read only. You cannot change the value of it once initialized, right? So these are the different access modifiers present in TypeScript. These access modifiers can fit in with any properties of a class like data or method. So it can be private method, it can be protected method, it can be public method, and it can be private data, protected data, and public data, right? So what I would say, private by default, when you haven't mentioned anything, by default TypeScript makes all the properties as public when you don't specify the access modifier. So here, since you haven't mentioned any of the access modifier, it means TypeScript assumes that all of these are public and makes them public. Okay, so what is a good practice is that you don't expose your data to the outer world directly, but you make them private and you make your functions public. Now what you can do is, once you create the object but you want to see what are the values of x and y, you cannot access them directly, but if you want to see the values, you can call a public method, that is p.print. This p.print will have access to the data inside that particular class, and when you execute the code, that print method is accessed. p.print, you don't have to console.log, it is returning nothing, right? So print method, so printing the data. Let's write another text, printing this dot x, right? I'll remove this console.log, and when you run this code, ts node classes printing 10,10. But if you try to access the same thing, p.x, it gives you an error saying that x is private and only accessible within class, right? So these are the access modifiers, and you have to mention an access modifier with the help of or in front of, just write them in front of the class, in front of the variable itself. So if you see here now, I have made this variable to be read only. It means this can be initialized only once, and if I try to change the values, set properties, right? Set properties. What you will do is, this dot x is equal to a comma b, and if you try to change the value of x sometime later after the initialization inside the constructor, you'll be automatically getting an error saying cannot assign to x because it is only a read-only parameter. So when you declare read-only, it means you are ensuring that that value is initialized only once, and when you don't do this, it means that value can be changed anytime, x string, y string. So see, now set properties, you can define, somebody else can define any other function, and those values can be changed in future. But let's say when a person is designing or writing a class and he wants those values to be read only, and no other developer or no other person when coming in future can't have any right to change that. Even if he tries to change, he has to take the permission. So read only means read only, so no other method can access or change the data, right? So now let me explain you the other concept, that is getters and setters. So by default it is a good practice to make all data properties of yours to private. So whatever data you are storing in a class, you have to make them private, or it is recommended to make them private. And if you are making them private, then how do you change those values at a later point? So constructor is called only once, first thing. So constructor can be called only once. Now you made certain data private, okay? You made certain data private. You don't want to access them directly to the outer world, but now you want to change the values of x and y at some point of time in your code execution, and you cannot invoke the constructor second time, because it is a special function which has which can be called only once and which doesn't return anything. So in that cases, what we do is we define getters and setters. So if you see here, I don't see sort imports fix all. Usually plugin gives us defining getters and setters. Yeah, generate get and set access. So see, now I have defined a variable private x, and I have defined two functions, that is public get x, public set x. So these two are the functions. One is get, it means it returns the value whatever is stored, and the other is set, it is used to change the value during runtime of the program. Similarly, I can set getters and setter values for other variable as well. So if you ask me, let me define that for you from the starting. So let's define a class person. Okay, so private, a person will have name, string, private, a person will have age, string, private, a person belongs to one place, string, and a person mobile, person will have some mobile, so string, right? So age is not string, age is number. Now I have to write a constructor. I have to write a constructor name comma age comma place comma mobile, and now I want to assign them this dot name equal to name, this dot age equal to age, this dot place equal to place, and this dot mobile is equal to mobile. Right now you have defined these methods, totally fine, but you have made them private. Then how would you access them in future, right? So new person, name is Vasudev, and age is 100, place is Hyderabad, and mobile is 1 2 3 4 5 6 7 8 9 0. Right now you have defined, like you have created a new person object called Vasudev, but how would you access, or how will you ever know that what is your name and what is your age and place after some time, right? How can you do this? So to get this done, right, so first we have to declare the types for it. So it will be string, it will be number, it will be string, it will be string, right? So this dot, now I have initialized it, but how will you access this particular data, right? So you, even it says that the data is declared but its value is never read. So for that purpose you expose the private methods public get name, right? So public get name. So just to make it work fine, what I'll do is I'll assign it with underscore. So a get accessor must return a value. So public get method will just do return this dot name. Similarly, everything public get age. So let me assign the underscore for each of these so that there is no confusion. yes, and public age, right, return this dot age. So this is how you define functions to access your private data. Those are called as getters. And sometimes if you want to change the data, let's say my birthday has come and I have to increase my age, right? So Vasudev has been created. Let's say you created an account in some of the places and now suddenly I want to update my age because of wrong calculation. Then how can you do that? Because this is a private property, right? In that case, we have the setter. So public set age will do this dot age is equal to, it will take a parameter age of type number, then you can directly assign it. So in future when you want to change my age, what I can do is Vasudev dot set age, Vasudev dot set age. So the setter method is accessible in a special way like this. So Vasudev dot age, basically though it is a method, getters and setters are special methods which don't need parentheses, or mainly for the setter method, right? So if you do this console.log Vasudev.age, right, Vasudev.age, you don't need, so it is, see, the expression is not callable because it is a get accessor. Did you mean to use without parentheses? So though this is a function, you don't have to call it by using parentheses. And here also I am calling the set, when I am doing Vasudev.age, it is not accessing any of these properties, but instead it is calling this function. So let me show you the proof. Console.log setting the age to age, right? So now when I run this code, so see, first Vasudev.age was 100. Now setting the age to 200. Let me console.log Vasudev.age, right? So 100, setting the age to 200 and 200. The value inside Vasudev got changed. Though you have made your elements as private, this is how you make them public, or you define methods, because methods are in your control. So you know what values are changed and how are you going to change. So sometimes maybe this age has a restriction so that you don't want a person below 50 years or above 100 years. So you can specify that restrictions over here, saying that if age is greater than 100, or if age is less than 50, then say console.log invalid age for the requested object, right? So you cannot set this, else you do this. So when somebody is trying to set an age in this fashion, or when you want to put some restrictions on this variable, you make it private and you define a function and you can put whatever restrictions in your name. So see, invalid age for the requested object, so it didn't change, right? So otherwise, if you have made this public, people can change, or how will you control what value they are being assigned, right? So this is how getters and setters are really useful when you want to control different things in your data, right? So next we'll look at getter, setters. So let me add getters and setters for all of these using the plugin, right? So you just have to click, hover on it, right click and refactor and generate getters and setters, right? That's it. So let me do it for all. Refactor, generate getters and setters. Refactor, refactor, generate getters and setters, and last refactor, generate getters and setters. So now everyone has their own getters and setters, right? So why the heck it got mobile _1? Cool. So other concept inside classes is that constructor overriding. So constructor can be multiple. So your constructor can have multiple things like this. So this constructor is going to take only 2 parameters, and this constructor is going to take only 3 parameters. Multiple constructors are not allowed. It is saying that but what you can do is constructor, generally this is called as constructor overriding, but TypeScript says that by default TypeScript makes all the properties as public when you don't specify the access modifier. Constructor can be called only once, right? So what it is saying is that by default everything is public and constructor methods are only called once, and the implementation of constructor is also only one. So constructor overriding is not possible in TypeScript in this fashion, which is regular in other type programming languages. Next, we will look at how you can inherit or how you can use the keyword extends in TypeScript, right? Class employee. So I'm defining a new class, but the thing here is that employee is also a person, but he has some additional things, like he works in a company, he has some ID card or ID number working in that company, right? So in such cases, I don't have to define all of these again and again, right? So what I can do is extends person, right? So now what it does is it brings all the public or all the data, it brings all the data inside, or all the properties of the person, into the derived class. So here what is base class and what is derived class is that employee is derived class and person is base class. Okay, so employee is derived class and person is base class. Now if I do this get data, right, I'm just or print data print data, right, and I want to initialize the data, right? I want to initialize the data. Here says that already it started giving me one warning. Constructors for derived class must contain a call super. So it is saying super. I have to call super. Now what is it, right? So as I said, the properties of all person will be now inside the employee as well. It means when you want to initialize a employee, indirectly it also means that you have to initialize the person. So in the constructor, generally what we do, we initialize the data of that particular class, right? Now since this class is extending the person class, it is saying that before you initialize any of my data, please initialize the parent as well, like this, right? So now what you have to do is parent. Here you will take the data of both parent and also the child. So let me quickly copy this, right? So let me quickly copy this and then I'll paste it over here. It will save us some time. And then additionally, what employee has company name and ID string. So when you have to initialize employee object and when you want to create a new employee, so string and ID is string, you have to first call the parent, because since derived class contains all the data of the parent class, then without initializing the parent class, you cannot initialize the base derived class. So this dot company is equal to company and this dot ID is equal to ID. So if you doubt, we can just console.log. We can just console.log this dot age. So see, automatically I'm getting recommendations. This dot age, this dot company, this dot ID, this dot mobile, this dot name. Basically, what are these? These are the getters: name, age, place. You remember, right? Our properties are underscore name, right? So when I typed this dot, though I have defined only company and ID, I'm getting recommendations for other data as well: company, ID, mobile, name, place. So these are the values. These are the values from my parent. This dot age, this dot place, this dot mobile, and this dot company, and this dot ID. So base class, a derived class gets all the properties of the parent class when extended. This extension is called as inheritance. When you extend, so this is derived, this is parent, right? So when derived class is extending another class, that class will contain all the data of the parent class as well, and that's the proof for it. So if you define a new object, employee equal to new employee, right? New employee. So you have to give all of those details again. Hyderabad, mobile 5678990, and company is code Sapiens, and then you have ID as 123. So after doing this, when you do print data, right? When you do print data, you can see that Vasudev 100 Hyderabad. Though you haven't defined those values, you are able to access those values. But if you try to access them like this, employee.age, employee._age, this is not present. So say property underscore age is private only and accessible only within the class person. So if you remember, when I was discussing about private and public and protected and read only, private, this data / method is not accessible anywhere outside the class, even inside the derived classes. Okay, so let's see that. So if you try to access this dot underscore age, it says property age is private and only accessible within the class, right? So what I'll do is I'll change few of the access modifiers. I'll make name as protected, right? Now what is protected? Protected is this data / method is only accessible inside the derived classes. So this is saying that employee being a derived class of person, this dot underscore name is accessible. So when you try to access a private property, it gave you an error. But when you try to access a protected property, it is giving no error. So protected and private, what is the difference? Private, that data is only accessible inside the class, okay? But protected, that can be accessed inside the derived classes. If some class is extending my base as my base class, then that data is accessible inside me. Perfect example is this dot name. So here name is attached with the identifier protected, hence that is accessible outside, right? But if you try to access this dot name outside the class like this, it is saying property name is protected and only accessible within class person and its subclasses. So protected data is only accessible inside the subclasses and private data is accessible only inside that class. But when you make any property public, right? When you make any public, that can be accessible inside or outside anywhere. So public property is accessible from anywhere, private property only inside classes, protected in derived classes as well. So this is one major difference which is needed, which we need to understand. And super class, this super, so what this super is, that it calls the constructor of this person. So if you just see inside the person constructor, I will add console.log person constructor is called, right? Person constructor is called. Now here person constructor is called. I never called a person constructor, but when I run this code, I can see person constructor is called. How is this possible? This is with the help of this super call. So this super call is being made to the parents class constructor, right? Next we will discuss about order of initialization. So first base class, so order of initialization, how it happens is base class variables are initialized, base class constructor is called, then derived class variables are initialized or declared. So here base class variables are declared. Let me make it a bit more clear, otherwise you will be confused. Constructor is used for initialization, and then derived class constructor is called. So this is the order of execution or order of calling, right? So here print data, right? So I can have a same function public print data inside, right? So sometimes there is a high possibility that you are going to define same function in both parent. So let's say parent already has a function, but you want to modify it according to you. So you can define or you can override that parent functions class and still you can execute your code. So this is called as function overriding. So you have overridden successfully the parent class function. So if I don't define this here, what will happen? So if I don't define this, since employee is extending the parent person class, it will get the property or access to this print data, but it will only print this much data. But you want to print your entire employee record, right? So in that case, you can override it with your own function, and that is totally possible. This is called as function overriding. Okay, so one important thing right? Before we discuss about this keyword and its importance and arrow functions, let me quickly cover about abstract classes. So what are abstract classes, right? So abstract classes are classes without objects, or you can say you cannot create objects for abstract classes. So you will be having abstract classes and also abstract properties or methods. It means abstract class important person, important or VIP, I would say VIP, right? And this has abstract class or abstract category is this actor or anything of that sort, and abstract get category or change category. This is a method, right? This is a method. Now abstract classes. So what is abstract class? Abstract classes are classes without objects, or you can say you cannot create objects for an abstract class. That is one important thing. So you define an abstract class just because somebody else can implement this class or extend this class, and implementing this class, what they have to do is they have to mandatorily implement these objects. So let's say class important person extends VIP. Non-abstract class does not implement, so it is automatically showing you, saying that non-abstract class important person does not implement inherited abstract member category and change category. So if you are extending any abstract class, it means that though this abstract class doesn't have any objects, but when you are extending any abstract class, you have to define those properties automatically. So see, your plugin automatically detected that VIP is an abstract class and you have to implement it. So abstract classes are just a way to force your derived class to definitely implement those functionalities which are needed. So abstract is like another blueprint which definitely one should follow, so you're not deviating from actual piece of code, right? So abstract classes are this. So abstract class, there can be abstract class, there can be abstract properties, or there can be abstract methods as well, right? Now this keyword and arrow functions, this is one of the most confusing concept in JavaScript, but let me try to break it down so that, but it is important. Point is, though it's confusing or it is an advanced concept, it's important, right? So this keyword, so let's say class, yeah, we already have a class person, right? Correct. So let me define a function called as a object confused or random person. Okay, random person is an object. Okay, here name is I am random. Okay, I am random person. Now I have name, okay, or get name. Here this will be employee dot name. Okay, so I have assigned employee dot name, reference of employee dot name, that is this function employee dot name. Okay, so employee dot name is accessible inside the derived class. No, employee dot name is accessible outside because this is a public identifier. Now when I call random person dot get name, what is the expected output? So employee dot name should ideally return the name of the employee, that is Vasudev, right? So it is just storing the reference. So what I have to do is employee dot name. Let me define a special function over here. Let's not spoil it. Public get employee name, right? This will return this dot name. Okay, so this will return this dot name. Now I will assign this function employee dot get employee, right? So now when I call employee dot get employee, what will happen here? Employee console dot log employee dot get employee name. So when I call this, what is the expected output? I have to get the employee name, right? So let me do that. PS node classes, I got employee name. So let me do emp dot get employee name is equal to, or it returned this value, right? I'll remove other console dot logs, or I'll stop calling this print data, and inside the super call as well. Yeah. Now when I run this, I got employee dot name is equal to Vasudev. Now I assign the same function. To a random object, random person, the reference of it, right? So basically when I do random person dot get name, what it should do, it should call employee dot get name, because this is just a reference and I have to get Vasudev, right? Let me see if I'm going to get that or not. Console.log, this is a random persons. Okay, so when I do this, when I'm calling random.getPerson, get name, what function is being called? Let's see, let's log that. Console.log this dot underscore name. Okay. Now when I run this, first get employee name, here this dot underscore name is Vasudev, that's why we got this dot underscore name as Vasudev. But when I called random person dot get name, this dot underscore name, that is which is inside the person object, it got changed to I am random person. That is why it is returning I am random person. What is this, right? This dot name was always the person's name which was initialized at this place, that should be Vasudev. But why am I getting I am random person? This is because in JavaScript the value of this keeps on changing. So if you see here, when I console.log this only, see, in the first case this is employee object, and in the second case this is the object itself. So by looking at this, what it says is that in JavaScript this value changes at runtime. That is, whoever is calling a function, calling a function, the value of this is that object. So here, first time the value of this or get employee name was called with employee object, so value of this is employee, and second time the function get name or the get employee is called from random person. That's why the value of this changed to the random person. So in JavaScript, the value of this changes at runtime. So this is a very confusing property, which means the value of this can change based on or how you are calling a function. To avoid this, there is one simple solution to make it arrow function. So arrow function is a new type of function in JavaScript. Now when you convert it into an arrow function, see, in both the cases it is employee. So what arrow function does is that it binds, or it doesn't allow to change the value of this during runtime. So it binds that this to this object itself. So arrow functions are a special type of functions. It is a feature of JavaScript. So when you define a method, a member property as an arrow function, then the value of this remains constant no matter from where you are calling. So now in both the cases, random person.get name and employee.get employee name, in both the cases it is returning the same object or it is pointing to the same object. So this is all about classes in TypeScript. It is a lengthy one. You have to know a lot of concepts. It is all object oriented programming. You don't have to do anything special, or you don't have to learn anything. There are few explicit cases where constructor overriding and defining types for a constructor, all of these are a bit different, and the access modifiers private, public, protected and read only. Other than that, and order of initialization, this keyword and its importance, rest all things remain same and in synergy with all other languages. So yeah, this is all about classes in TypeScript.